Hello students. So till now we have discussed about canning and bottling of various horticultural producers, fruits and vegetables. So even though if you take utmost care in processing them and keeping them for a longer periods of time, but there are plenty of chances by which a canned food or canned or a bottled food is going to be spoiled. So because of various reasons. So today we will discuss about the causes of spoilage of these canned foods and how to identify these spoilages in the canned foods and how to rectify so while processing so this kind of spoilages. So what is exactly spoilage in a canned food? So when you define a canned food becomes spoiled. So spoilage can be defined something like this. So it is any food so that becomes unfit or undesirable is unacceptable. So it is not desired or unfit for human consumption because of various reasons. So because either it may be spoiled because of a microorganism, or it may be due to any physical or chemical damages, chemical changes so that occurs during the processing or during storage or during handling. So during the course of scanning or bottling, so these various reasons are responsible for the spoilage of this canned foods. So you can see this and for microorganisms, so basically they enter during various stages of your processing. So even if you don't use a healthy fruit, or if you don't handle them in a proper way, in a hygienic way, or whenever you're even you're processing them, uh, the processing is not proper. So whether the temperature is below par, or and contamination as a result of your leakages in the cans, so this causes the spoilage of these canned foods. So we know that the canned foods will be spoiled because of various reasons, various causes. So these causes can be broadly classified into two basic reasons. So one can be biotic factors, another one will be abiotic factors. Biotic and abiotic factors. So biotic factors concerning in the living organisms, or the living beings, or your abiotic factors include your temperature, moisture, oxygen, presence of air, and even the light. So if you look at the biotic factors include uh, microbial spoilage, enzyme action, and the parasites and rodents. So if you keenly look into that, so do you remember any of the aspects of the principles of preservation? Yes. So these the three principles of preservation are reflected in this biotic factors. One is that is by prevention of food spoilage, by preventing the microbes, by preventing self decomposition, and preventing the action of this insects, pests, and rodents, isn't it? So here the biotic factors include microbes and the self decomposition, that is enzymes and insect and pests. So under microbes we have three enemies. So that is your mold, yeast, and bacteria, so which will cause spoilage of the foods. So amongst this, so mold and yeast can be easily taken care of because they are very sensitive to a slight heat, and if you remove the available oxygen, they can be killed or they can be destroyed. But the thing is, the difficult aspect is the bacteria, which we need to take up by and exposing them to very high temperatures. So the causes of spoilage are broadly classified into biotic factors and abiotic factors. So biotic factors includes microbes, enzymes, and insect pests, right? And the abiotic factors include your temperature, moisture, and oxygen and light. Alright, after classifying the causes for the spoilage of canned foods into biotic and abiotic factors, so we'll be going step by step about all these factors, and we'll be trying to know them about each and every aspect of it. What is their structure, what is their mechanism, so how they exactly are going to spoil the food, what are the changes they bring about in a food, and what are its suitable conditions. So once if you know the suitable condition of a particular microbe, you can easily destroy these microbes by creating unfavorable conditions, right? So first we will discuss about biotic factors. So under biotic factors, as we have seen, microbes, enzymes, and rodents and other um, animals, right? So first we will discuss about microbial spoilage. So under microbial spoilage, we have three microbes so that are under our radar. So those are yield, yeast, molds, and bacteria. So first we are going to discuss about in general about these microbes. So apart from their being harmful in nature, but they have certain desired actions that bring about everyday lives necessities, like your cheese, so which is brought about by the lactic acid bacteria in the curd, or fermentation of various products like your dosa or idli batter. They are all brought about by the microbes. Without microbes you cannot make such delicious dishes, or your curries, or whatever it is, like for cheese, or making a batter. So apart from that, they are also useful in beer and wine preparation. So it is carried out by the yeast, and aspergillus species are helpful in the production of citric acid. So that is the advantages or the desirable changes that are brought about by the desired microbes, right? First aspect of microbial spoilage, the microbe that we are going to discuss is yeast. So apart from its wide usage in the industry of bread making or wine, beer, cheese, and enzyme production, um, it has got its disadvantages and undesirable changes, or bring about the changes in the canned foods. How exactly this yeast is going to bring undesirable change in a canned food? So it causes fermentation. So that means the sugars which are present in a foodstuff are being converted into alcohol and carbon dioxide. So it causes production of alcohol and carbon dioxide upon fermentation. So usually the foodstuffs like your fruit juices, syrups, honey, jam, jellies, all these are being spoiled. So when they are stored in canned food because of this yeast. So yeast causes fermentation, which upon fermentation converts sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide. So what are the conditions which are suitable for the growth of this yeast? Basically, the suitable conditions of this yeast, if you look into it, so moisture, temperature, and pH. The moisture, so its moisture, whenever the moisture is very high to low, so that conditions makes this yeast comfortable to grow. The temperature suitable for their growth is ranging from 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. Uh, Maximum they can grow up to 47 degrees Celsius even under extreme conditions. So this temperature range is limited to 47 degrees Celsius from 25 degrees Celsius. So the pH conditions, so it is a best performer in the acidic pH conditions, that is ranging from 4 to 4.5, but they are unable to grow in the alkaline conditions. So we need to know that here, so they are very sensitive to high temperature. So that can this yeast can be easily managed once they are exposed to a high temperature. So more than 47 degrees Celsius, they can be killed. Their multiplication will be spoiled, or they can be damaged. They can be destroyed by exposing them to a slight temperature. But whereas in addition to that, the pH, if the conditions of the juice or beverage is acidic, is suitable for their growth. But if it is more than 4.5, so they cannot grow. So these are the two conditions which can be utilized in preventing the spoilage that is caused by yeast. So first thing is, so their optimum temperature, that means they have a temperature which is very low, so that means they cannot grow under very high temperatures. The second thing is, so they cannot grow in alkaline conditions. So these are the two aspects which we can take into consideration for preventing the spoilage by molds. Next, biotic factor, so that includes your molds, so which causes spoilage of canned foods. And basically a powdery white or colored or dark or black colored or smoky growth on the surface of simple to complex types of food material. So it grows on the surface of the foods, and this particular mold is characterized by strict aerobe. So this for the growth of this particular microbe, this mold, it requires aerobic conditions, that is availability of oxygen. So if you curtail them, if you prevent the availability of oxygen around them, they stop to grow, they cease to grow. So let's see the various other conditions so which will help in the multiplication of this mold. The first thing is moisture conditions. So it requires less moisture compared to the yeast moisture requirement. The moisture requirement of yeast is little bit higher than that of the moisture requirement of molds. So that means it can grow even under low moisture conditions. And the temperature conditions, it requires a lesser temperature. So the yeast, we have seen it can even grow up to a temperature of 47 degrees Celsius. So but this one is confined to a temperature of 37 degrees Celsius from 25 degrees Celsius. So it has also got a range of temperature which is low. So low temperature range, and even the freezing temperatures or the refrigeration temperatures are also suitable for its growth. Though some of the molds are psychotrophic in nature, they can even grow under refrigerator conditions. That's why when you leave a fridge for a long periods of time, so it causes a moldy growth on the surface of the food, even in the freezer or in the refrigerator. So that means, so molds can able to grow even under lower temperatures, but the higher temperature being limited to 37 degrees Celsius. So it has got a pH range, so which is very wide. So that means from acidic to even alkaline up to 8.5, from 2 to 8.5. It has got a very wide range of pH. It can grow, most of the molds, they can grow under conditions which are acidic. So they require acidic, aerobic, and low temperature to maximum of 37 degrees Celsius conditions for their growth. So having understood so these suitable conditions, by creating a condition, so that is anaerobic conditions, by removing the air, by removing the available air or entrapped air, that's what we do exactly in the case of our exhaustion. So during which you remove entrapped air, so thereby you can prevent the growth of microbes like your molds, and even exposing to a very high temperature. So most of the canning is carried out at a temperature of 100 degrees Celsius, 110 degrees Celsius, so which is way beyond the optimum temperature for the growth of your mold or even yeast. So they both can be killed under these temperature conditions, right? So the molds can be taken care by these factors. Apart from that, so even if the molds are growing, so what type of harm that you observe? So basically these molds, most of the molds are not harmful, but some of the molds, they produce toxins. These are called as mycotoxins. So like in the case of your groundnut, there are aflatoxins. In the case of your apples, you will see a production of patulin from the Penicillium expansum. And even you can see in the millets or grains which are not properly dried. right? Next biotic factor that causes spoilage of canned foods is bacteria. So this is the major microorganisms that causes threat, that causes challenge to the processing industry because of its the suitable conditions for the growth of uh, which that for the multiplication of this particular microorganism is ranging from the temperatures so very high. So because the microorganism bacteria can grow even at a higher temperatures or even at lower temperatures or at ordinary temperatures. So that's the reason it poses a challenging task for the processing industry, for the canning industry. So let's say this bacteria. So whenever you see a bacterial spoilage, it can be observed by the presence of a slimy growth or a discoloration or a cloudiness or a deposition below the container. So there's a discoloration basically and a moldy growth, so which can be observed easily with the naked eye. So thereby you can identify the spoilages as a result of this particular bacteria. So what are the suitable conditions for the growth of the bacteria? So if you see, the first suitable condition is the pH. The pH seems to be uh, more than 4.5, so that gives an indication that it cannot grow under acidic conditions or under low pH conditions. So the fruits or vegetables which are usually acidic in nature, so they can tolerate the bacterial multiplication, they can prevent the growth of bacteria. And so the presence and absence of oxygen, so unlike the molds, so which are strictly aerobic, so molds are aerobic, they require uh, presence of oxygen for their multiplication, but these bacteria, they can grow in the presence or in the absence of oxygen. So those are called as your facultative anaerobes, or aerobes are there and anaerobes are there. So different types of bacteria which can grow under wide variety of availability of oxygen, in the presence, in the absence, or in both or presence or absence of oxygen. Another condition is that so the temperature. So they are bacteria which are thermophiles, mesophiles, or even psychophiles. So that means so they can grow under very high temperatures, that is more than 45 degrees Celsius, and a very low temperatures, that is less than 20 degrees Celsius, the psychophiles. And you have bacteria which can grow under normal temperatures. So that means the bacteria can grow under wide variety of temperatures. So this causes a serious threat to the canning industry. So usually the bacteria cause spoilage in most of the vegetables or in fruits which are low acidic or high pH. So because their pH range in which they grow is more than 4.5, right? So if you understand the conditions suitable for each microbe, it is easy to destroy them, to prevent them to multiply in a can or in a bottle. The second biotic factor, so first biotic factor we have covered, that are by microbes, so which includes mold, yeast and bacteria. And the second biotic factor includes enzyme action. So the enzymes which are present in the food or that are produced by the microbes, so they can also act upon the food substance and bring about changes which are change in their texture or flavor or color, so which are undesirable. So these changes are brought about by the enzymatic action. But there are certain other desirable changes also, just like in the case of your ripening changes, so where some of the enzymes, so they involve in production of ethylene, which bring about ripening process. So you studied about the biosynthesis of ethylene, so wherein certain enzymes are involved in the production of like your SAM and ACC, and ethylene production from methionine, where there are different enzymes are involved in the production of ethylene, which subsequently bring about the changes required for ripening. So those are desirable changes. There are undesirable changes are also there, so which are brought about because of the presence of certain enzymes. So these enzymes causes undesirable changes, like they bring about changes in the texture, color, and flavor of the food. So if you look at the various the conditions suitable for the this activity of these enzymes, the enzymes basically they are nothing but proteins. So they are proteins, so which can be easily be denatured at a temperature of around more than 80 degrees Celsius. So that means they have a active temperature, so the temperature in which they can survive, so they can stay active, is ranging from 37 degrees Celsius. So some of the enzymes, they can survive, they can be active from 0 to 60 degrees Celsius. So but they can be inactivated. So the active temperature is 0 to 60 degrees Celsius, and the inactive uh, temperature is 80 degrees Celsius. And so if you carry out a process that is called as blanching, that means dipping a fruit or vegetable in boiling water, so that is at around 100 degrees Celsius. So it brings about denaturation of these enzymes, so which will eventually denature the enzymes, which will not be able to bring about the undesirable changes in the food during its storage in the cans or bottles, right? So so these enzymes can be denatured by exposing them to very high temperatures, right? So the most of the enzymes so that are involved in the food deterioration, they include your polyphenol oxidase and amylases and pectin methylesterase and polygalactorases. Next biotic factor includes insects, parasites, and rodents. So insects, the adults include like bugs, weevils, fruit flies, and other moths. So they damage the food. They feed upon them, they consume them as a part of their eating, and even the eggs that are being hatched by these adults. So they tend to survive even the food is undergone the processing. So even they are subjected to processing, they still remain, and these can be controlled. So these eggs, including the eggs and the adults, can be controlled by fumigation. So by fumigation using certain chemicals like methyl bromide, ethylene oxide, and propylene oxide. So these will control the these insect pests. So next comes the parasites. So these parasites, so they enter the system of domesticated pigs. So the nematodes, they enter the domesticated pigs because of the uncooked food. So they get remained in the food, so they get into the food chain because of these parasites, so retain in the food. And then another damage that is caused by the spoilage caused by the rodents. So rodents are the devastating mammals, so they cause uh, devastation on the grains or stored grain pests. So they feed upon them, they litter everywhere. The litter and the urine of rodents, it will harbor different bacteria so which will cause diseases. And even the rats, so they tend to spread certain diseases and fever like a typhoid and plague are caused by these rats. So these are the some of the spoilages that are caused by insects, rodents, and even the parasites. So till now we have discussed about the spoilage of the canned food because of biotic factors, which includes mold, yeast, and bacteria, because of microbes and enzyme action and insects, pests, parasites, and rodents. So those are the biotic factors. The abiotic factors includes your temperature, moisture, light, and oxygen. So under temperature, we discuss about the spoilages. So as you can see, this temperature is the main reason for the storing of the foods. So the high temperature that is employed during processing helps the food to store for a very longer periods of time, because it enables to kill all the microbes that are present inside the can, right? So, but the extremes of temperature, either higher temperature or lower temperature, both will cause the deterioration in the foodstuff. So if there is a very high temperature, it has got to have a pronounced effect on the deterioration in terms the qualitative loss, that is vitamins which are heat sensitive will be lost, and the enzymes which will hold the textural and flavor loss intact will be lost. And because of the high temperature, so the surface moisture is dried up, so it is lost, so thereby the texture becomes uh, what do you call, dried up, and it will become cakey, and the surface will become dried up as a result of high temperature. Even the lower temperature, the storing them at a lower temperature by freezing or refrigeration causes damage on the structure of the fruits or vegetables. So the loss of structure as a result of storing them under very low temperature is seen at a temperature of 4 degrees Celsius. So you will see surface pitting, darkening, and lesions and browning. So this type of chilling injury symptoms are observed under very low temperatures. That's why some of the tropical fruits like your banana, tomato, lemons are stored at temperature higher than 10 degrees Celsius to avoid this kind of chilling injury. So the extremes of temperature, whether it is high temperature, it's going to cause denaturation of proteins and loss of nutrients. Very low temperature, loss of structure is going to affect your food. So the temperature is going to cause damage or spoilage in canned foods. Next important abiotic factor which causes spoilage is the moisture. The moisture is the main culprit, which is the reason for spoilage of most of the food stuff. Higher the moisture content, the faster is the rate of deterioration. So you see most of the fruits and vegetables, so they are having 80 to 90%, sometimes more than 98%, they contain moisture. So this kind of high moisture levels make them highly perishable. If you look at the leafy vegetables or fruits or any kind of vegetable, they are highly perishable because of the fact that they contain high amount of moisture. So this moisture harbors or helps for the faster multiplication or the metabolism of the microbes. If you remove this moisture by one or the other means, by putting them in a lattice, or by withholding them or preventing them to be freely available to the microbes, so then you can restrain or you can prevent the microbial growth. Even this moisture is also required for the active action of these enzymes. These enzymes act in a condition where there is sufficient moisture. And what exactly the changes that you observe where there is a change in the surface of moisture with relative humidity? So when there is a sudden fluctuations in the moisture levels, it causes stickiness or crystallization, or even you will find on the surface of the food certain cracks and caking. So you will see there is a surface moisture level uh, differences, so that will cause the textural changes, and even the condensation which is as a result of respiration of the fruits and vegetables. So this is a living entity, so they continue to respire, and they, as a result of respiration, so they produce moisture. So this particular moisture is a source of microbial growth. So even if the pack so that you use, it's a pack which is moisture free packages, even under such conditions also, so this moisture is prevailing is because of the fact that they respire and transpire in the packs. So what has to be done to curtail or to prevent this available moisture, that is freely available moisture. The extent of moisture that can be made available to the food is limited, because if you go beyond a limit which crosses certain limits, so that the food will not be consumed in a way it has to be consumed. So are you able to are you able to catch my point? It means to certain extent the moisture can be removed. Beyond that limit, if you remove the moisture, the entire property of the food is going to be lost. The food doesn't remain the food, it's a dead matter. So you need to retain that particular amount of food beyond certain limit, right? So now you understood the importance of moisture in the food, that plays a key role in the deterioration or the spoilage of the food. So based on this, so we can understand that the water plays an important role in keeping the shelf life of the foods. The water activity is the one which can measure the shelf life of the food. So this lower the water activity of the food, higher is the shelf life. So that means the available water is reduced, shelf life of the food will be higher. So how do you define this particular water activity? So water activity is defined as a ratio or a proportion of vapor pressure of water in the food to the vapor pressure of the water in the pure water. So that means, so it is the ratio of water vapor pressure in the food to the water vapor pressure in the pure water. So this gives water activity. Say for example, if you take the water activity of pure water is found to be 1. So because the vapor pressure of the pure water is 1, because the numerator and denominator remains the same, right? So when water activity is 1, then there is a plenty of water available to the microbes, so for their multiplication. If it is less than 1, so that means if the denominator is increased, so that means if the freely available water molecules are reduced, then the numerator will be dominated by the denominator, that is the water activity will be reduced. So the water activity can also be defined by Raoult's law of mole fractions. So Raoult's law of mole fractions defines the ratio of moles of water in a solution to the total number of moles of water and the solute in the solution. So it is a ratio of moles of water in a solution to the total number of moles of water and solution. So that gives Raoult's law. Hello students. Today we will discuss about bottling of fruits and vegetables. So in the previous classes, so we have learned how to store fruits and vegetables for a very long time in tin containers. So that is called as canning. If the same fruits and vegetables, so they are stored in a bottle, so that process is called as bottling. So bottling of fruits and vegetables. So you would have come across in a supermarket in a display shelves, so you have both cans as well as the bottles. So for example, you can see some of the fruit beverages like juice, squash, cordial, RTS, and even some of the jams. So they are placed, and even the pickles, they are placed in what do you call glass containers. So that will give a clear impression, a clarity of what exactly is present inside the container. Those are the glass containers. And whereas that is not possible in the case of your a canned fruit or a vegetable. So there is only a display of label that is present outside depicting the contents of it. So such is the advantage in the case of your bottling on the bottles. So today we will discuss about these advantages of these bottles over the cans and its various properties and different types of bottles, and then you will see at what aspects in what aspects so this bottling process differs from the canning process in terms of either sterilization or exhaustion or even leaving the head space, and various other aspects so that come across in the process of storing the fruits and vegetables in bottles. And the last abiotic factor which causes spoilage of canned foods is oxygen and light. So these factors will not only deteriorate in terms of nutritional aspects but also encourage in the growth of certain microbes. Just in the case of oxygen, so which is important factor for the growth of molds, which are strict aerobes. So as already discussed, that the molds are considered to be strict aerobes. So without the presence of oxygen, these molds cannot grow. So by removing this oxygen, we can prevent the growth of molds. So this can be done by creating either vacuum or by flushing with inert gases like nitrogen or carbon dioxide. So by filling them, so that you see in the case of your, for example, vita packing in the case of your cashew nuts, so where you remove available oxygen, so by removing air present in it by vacuuming or flushing with inert gases like nitrogen, thereby you prevent the availability of oxygen. Or even the light, so light has also got an influence over the nutrients. So in presence of light will cause a loss of certain nutrients like your vitamin B2, A, C, and also they will lose the color. So if you use cans which are opaque, so there is no loss in such nutrients. But when you are using glass bottles, in the case of bottling, if you use opaque glasses or the glasses which are opaque to specific wavelengths, so which causes a deterioration of all these nutrients, so then you can prevent the loss of these nutrients because of the light exposure. And again this particular light exposure, the duration of light, so is important for the maximum duration. Higher the duration and higher will be the loss in terms of deterioration. So it is a time dependent factor. So these are the various factors, the biotic factors and abiotic factors, so which will be affecting the spoilage of the canned foods. So we have discussed about biotic factors and abiotic factors. Under biotic factors, we have seen the microorganisms and enzymes, and then the insects, parasites, and rodents. Under biotic factors, under abiotic factors, we have seen temperature, moisture, light, and oxygen. Right? I hope you have understood the factors that are causing the spoilage of canned foods.